want to talk about what I've learned when designing games that transform players. The first thing I've learned is that it's really hard. I thought I'd be honest. If anyone here has worked on serious games, maybe you know, and you can tell the room. Yeah, tell them. It's hard, right? Yeah, see? Consensus. That means it's true. And we want to do this for the climate crisis. That's also hard. So one of the big reasons this is so hard is because we're used to thinking in terms of problems and solutions. Like if a light goes out, we can replace the light. If the game we are making isn't hitting frame rate targets, there are problems. There are ways that we can solve that problem. We are creative people. We are problem solvers. We're going to find solutions, and if we can't find a solution, we're going to invent a solution, and that's amazing. And I have really good news about the climate crisis. It's solved. The IPCC report covers in really great detail what needs to happen to stop the crisis from getting worse. We have already invented pretty much all of the technology we need. There's consensus on how this works technically. We know what to do. But these actions that we need to take, whether for mitigation or resilience, mean changing people's behavior, changing ways of life, changing ways of being, and that is hard. And that is why we're here. This is not a room of NASA engineers, I assume. This is not a room of climate scientists in general. Those rooms are really important. They've already done a lot of work. They need help. They need support. This is a room of people involved with games or interested in games at the very least. All the scientific knowledge and inventions in the world have not yet managed to help people adjust to the changes that are already here. We need experiences to help us do that, and that is where you come in. As you heard Arnaud talk about, all of you can help, no matter your discipline. So I'm going to share 3 things I think are really important to consider when designing for change. Some stories and lessons from me to you from my career across the broader world of design for you to apply today and in the future as you see fit, if they are relevant to what you're working on. Here we go. First, I want you to consider your framing. How are you framing your climate topic? How are you framing the ways you want people to respond? Let me show you what I mean. This whole thing that we're doing here, this is framed as a workshop. You came here today for a workshop because we told you this is a workshop. But it doesn't have to be a workshop. So this isn't a workshop anymore. That was a lie. This is now a fundraiser. Gotcha. Sorry to put you all on the spot. I run a conservation not-profit, by the way. We're focused on squirrels because there's too few of them or something. So I'd really appreciate donations of time or money, mostly money, to help me save the squirrels. So if anyone wants to come forward, donations would start at 5,000 rupees. Does that sound fair? I want to note for the record that no one's coming forward. I had assumed you all care about the environment, or you would. This is really disappointing. Something about this dynamic does not seem convincing to you. Like you're not trusting me with your money. Does this seem like a scam to you? What if I put a photo up? Much better. Still a bit scammy, but at least it's cuter. So this approach clearly isn't working. Me just asking you for money, not working. What if instead I tell you a story? I promise, this is a true story. Water, earth, fire, air. 10,000 years ago, the red squirrels of Scotland lived in harmony. Everything changed when the gray squirrels attacked. Stowing away on British ships coming from the Americas, the Greys made landfall in England and swept north, invading forest after forest, leaving no room for the innocent, cute red squirrels. And today, there are almost no red squirrels left. But there is hope. Red squirrel conservation efforts are working together to spread the message, turning the red squirrel into a cultural symbol of Scotland and making it clear how you can help. First, you can help by reporting sightings. I'm not kidding. It's like Pokemon Go, except with a real animal. And you're helping save an entire species. You can play alone, you can play with others, right outside in your own forests, if you live in Scotland, and it's free to play, but if you do have money, and again, you can participate if you don't have money, but if you do have money, you can donate, and these conservation organizations will take the side of the red squirrels and set their sights on the invasive gray squirrels and eradicate them to win back Scotland for the Reds. This is true. This is a true headline. So you can see perhaps why this is the framing that the red squirrel conservation efforts are going with. It's much more effective at bringing in money than my just you asking you for money was. But let me tell you another true story. So red squirrels have lived in Scotland for 10,000 years, and then about 300 years ago, humans cut down all of the forests, and the red squirrels went extinct. And people said, oops, probably. And then people traveled to mainland Europe, where there are an absolute ton of a different kind of squirrel that's also red. And they took some of these European red squirrels, and they moved them to the British Isles, and this newly introduced invasive red squirrel species exploded in population and gnawed on everything in sight, and the British government declared them pests and printed pamphlets begging everyone to do their patriotic British duty and kill all the red squirrels. And people did it. And by 1927, the government said, well done, we can stop killing red squirrels now. We've pretty much wiped them out. Meanwhile, gray squirrels stepped off the boat from the Americas and found empty forests. The gray squirrels settled, and they were cute, and they were exotic, and they were the scrappy newcomer, and the human population of the British Isles welcomed them. And the gray squirrels thrived until they became the majority squirrel population. And over there, they liked the native underdog more than they liked the exotic majority, so the population turned on them and blamed them for the slaughter of the red squirrels. Both stories I told you are true, but they have very different reactions. How you frame a thing matters. Always consider the point of what your effort is. Consider your point and try not to lose it. Check if your gameplay provides entertainment at the expense of your chosen topic. Keep your fun aligned with healthy, useful behaviors that you want. And remember that your framing defines your truth. I'm not saying nothing is true and nothing matters. Apathy is not the point and serves no purpose. My point is the opposite. Your framing defines your truth, and that is everything. That changes behavior. Gray squirrels are impacted when the population believes they are killing all the red squirrels, when they are the target of mass culling. Their forests in the UK are impacted. The state of the landmass is impacted. Squirrels evolved with forests. Forests evolved with squirrels. They depend on each other for healthy growth. You can't just kill them all and expect the forest to be okay. So, which story are you going to tell? You need to decide before you finish making your game. And your decision can lead to some powerful positive impacts too. So our older games at Mindblown Labs worked by reframing terrifying financial decisions into options that people can play with until they're comfortable enough to make a choice in real life, and it worked. It got people comfortable making healthy financial decisions in real life. And sometimes our framing is a little less metaphorical too. About a year ago, I worked with colleagues at Edinburgh on this project. Basically, the environmental context is that grass lawns, this started in England, grass lawns are socially coded as good and clean. But environmentally, mowed grass lawns are equivalent to concrete. They aren't green spaces in any meaningful metric. So we worked with landscape architects who were frustrated by clients who would ask for clean, mowed grass lawns, even though the architects knew that they caused environmental damage. And we found that people who are asking for lawns don't even think about lawns. They don't even see lawns consciously. It's just hard for people to imagine anything else. So we needed a tool that landscape architects could use to convince their clients to think differently. So we literally framed some lawns. We built a giant wooden frame with a glass window and got some people to play and imagine what else they might see through their window. And it was a hit, and people played all day. And we asked people how their perceptions had changed, and their perceptions of lawns had entirely transformed. One woman who played at this window walked away and told me, I'm going to go home and replace my lawn with a community garden. Another one said, I didn't even notice this lawn was here. Reframing has an impact. Okay, so that's framing. Next up, I want you to consider your context. Context is key is one of those cliche phrases, and I am embarrassed to have it up here in terms of, I wish I could come up with a more clever way to say this. But the reason I have this section is because I found it's one of the most important parts of designing for change, and it's one of the most forgotten about parts when designers are new to designing for change. And I don't think the problem here is a knowledge problem. Everyone knows context is important. Everyone knows context changes meaning. It changes communication. It changes everything. Just like when I'm at home in Scotland, no one gives it any conscious thought. No one thinks about it. But everyone knows that when a British accent says pants, it's very different than when me with my California accent say pants. Everyone knows this. The problem actually might be that context seems on the surface to be handled very differently when you're designing for change versus designing to be profitable. What I mean is, we know that specificity is important when aiming for impact. But that's at odds with broad appeal that helps with market success. Ben Abraham writes about this tension in his really great book, Digital Games After Climate Change. It's an excellent book. I don't have time to really dig into it today. I encourage you to read it. But there's a really well-considered critique, he writes, in this book about using games for climate messaging, about what we're doing today. And undeniably, what he is critiquing does happen. We do see game projects that intend to target positive real-world impacts, sometimes be so afraid of this tension between specificity and marketability that they end up being so unspecific that there is no impact. I don't think this has to be the truth of the matter. I think there's examples that this tension doesn't have to exist as much if we handle it really carefully. I think there are ways to center the context of your project and find creative solutions to this problem. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So this is a project by Victoria Bial, who is a designer working on systemic change for sustainable food systems in and around Edinburgh in Scotland. In the context of food networks that emphasize ease over locality, she is arguing strongly that foraging can be a powerful tool to aid those communities and communicate broader connections to food systems, land, and seasonality. So when she set out to get people to actually forage and use foraging in their lives and make foraged food a part of their food sourcing, she came to realize through her work that specificity and context was key. She worked with the Camo Estate, which is a place in Western Edinburgh, and created an experience for the community that lived there. So she could have put up flyers, she could have designed a promotional campaign to get people to forage. She didn't do that. It's really hard to get people who aren't used to foraging to pay attention to that. By grounding her project in a specific location, she was able to craft a game that got participants, that got players to actually search for real plants she wanted to teach people about. It worked. Players entered the estate. They used a QR code to unlock a map on their phone. By following the map and the clues on their phone, they were tasked with finding real forageable plants. And even if the players were completely unfamiliar with those plants before, they know that they found the right plant because they'll find an actual wooden box nestled among the plants. And in that secret treasure box, there are cards. And if you take a card, the cards have information on how to responsibly forage that plant, how to use it, and how to learn more. And she messaged safety really intentionally too, ensuring players wouldn't end up in dangerous situations or be led to dangerous lookalike plants. So players came away from this game with a collection of cards representing the knowledge they gained during the play to help them remember what they had learned in a place that they could find again and where they go often already and could find again in the future. This game was only built last August, so I don't have like hard efficacy data for you, but I have anecdotal efficacy data for you in that I played it. And I am a city boy who had never foraged before, and after this game, I've gone out foraging by myself. I've made jam, I've made gin, and that would have been unthinkable for me a year ago. This example is still young, so I need to give you an example of how this type of model can scale to more than just one location. So for the last 6 years, I've worked with the Richard Miles Johnson Foundation on their Bite of Reality game. Bite of Reality is a game played in a physical space, again, augmented by an app that facilitates play for American teenagers, and it offers a really specific experience to a really specific audience. When a group of teens starts the game, the app assigns them adult identities, careers, and aligning incomes. And with the help of adult volunteers in the room becomes a simulated city. So the teens get to live out their adult lives for a day and make it through the day, here's the challenge, without going bankrupt. And let me tell you, most of them go bankrupt. An adult income obviously feels like an enormous amount of money to a child who has not yet handled money. So the moment when a kid in this game goes back to the car dealership stall to return their sports car so they can afford to eat a meal, something really magical happens there. We run pre- and post surveys on every player of this game to keep track of the impacts on financial capability. And I don't have time to show all of the data we collect, but the game works. It changes how players think and feel and behave around budgets. And we're successful because we're creating a rich, specific experience that directly addresses why our target audience isn't already practicing the behaviors we want them to practice. For this audience, money doesn't feel real to them, and we make it feel real, and it changes how they behave. It's exactly the approach Victoria takes in her foraging game. Her players weren't foraging because they needed to see their environment in a new way, and her game opened their eyes to it. At this point, you might be thinking, Trevin, very cool for the 20 people that play this game. How does this can't scale? But it can scale, and we have scaled this one, but in reality even scaled during the pandemic. We built a way to play the game over Zoom. You see, the key was to find organizations who had money and stood to benefit from us scaling. So these games are facilitated by financial institutions. Kids don't pay any money to play this game. Instead, financial institutions pay us to continue to develop the game, and in return, they get a little bit of branding and in the app and a healthy way to engage their local communities. Being banked is good for our audience, and if our audience banks with our sponsors, that's good for our sponsors. So we've not reached millions of people, but the game has been reproduced by these financial institutions over and over and over again in many different localities across the United States. 31,000 kids have played this game so far this year, and we know we're having a positive impact on those players. Ezio Manzini has this great book, Design When Everyone Designs. He is not a game designer. He's writing about design for social innovation, but I think it directly applies to what we do. He writes about thinking about designers differently, not thinking about designers as people who come in from the sky, land out of context, and just fix things, but rather designers as facilitators who can find where people can help each other within their context and help connect the dots. So Bite of Reality helps connect financial institutions with financially underliterate teens. Victoria connects a place and the Camo Estate in Edinburgh with the community that has access to it and teaches that community how to get the most out of their land in a way that is sustainable and really lowers their grocery bills in a time when many there can't afford grocery bills. These are not traditional game dev models, but they do work. So I want you to consider, who are you trying to impact? What is their context? And how are you going to reach them within that context? You need to ask these questions before you make assumptions about what kind of game you're going to make, because the answers will determine what kind of game you're going to make. And that could be really exciting because it can lead you to some really interesting design decisions. So that's context. Finally, I'd like you to consider trust. I ended the section on framing by asking you which true story you're going to choose to tell, which was not fair of me, because this is so important. Truth is dependent on trust. The scientific process and academic process is amazing, super valuable, the reason we understand so much about the world we live in. I'm not suggesting that doesn't work. I'm not suggesting nothing is true and nothing matters. My point is the opposite. If we're going to convince people to change, we need to consider why people ever change. Because you can't just tell your audience to believe something because science says so. That's not a method of an argument. Science is not the practice of writing down words and saying they are true. That's not where scientific knowledge comes from. It's a system. It includes direct observation. It includes the reproduction of results. It includes peer review. It includes journals that decide what can and can't be published. I was talking to my former program director at the University of Edinburgh just a couple days ago, Dr. Arnaud Verhoeven. And I remember I really like the way he puts it. Science is a system designed to translate direct observation of the natural world into a story that earns the collective social trust. And thank goodness it exists. We don't have time. We do not have time to directly observe everything we're supposed to know. Like, I have never seen anyone skydive and not die. I've never seen anyone skydive, basically. But Grant, who heard this morning, good friend of mine, he's done it a ton of times, he's told me. And I've known Grant half my life. I trust him, so I believe skydiving does not always end in death. I have not been to Madagascar. Cartographers could be lying. Has anyone in this room been to Madagascar? See? We don't know. Fact, Santa is real. So this is not a metaphor. I'm talking specifically about like Coca-Cola American Santa Claus. I'm telling you there's a large, jolly man who sits in the North Pole with a big white beard right now, and every Christmas he visits every house and gives them gifts. I'm telling you that's a fact. And you're looking at me like you don't believe me, which is very rude. I spent this entire day trying to build a trusted relationship with you, and it didn't work. It's because maybe you feel the entire weight of your social network of trust telling you that what I am telling you as a fact is actually wrong. This is our challenge. This is what I mean. This reaction you feel when I tell you fact, Santa is real, this is the same strong reaction that others have when we tell them they have to change in the context of the climate crisis. This stretches across contexts. Again, science and academia have entire processes and considerations for slowly building trust. As game developers, we need to think really hard about what we have to build trust. What do we do? What's our argument for trust? Should players trust us because we make them smile? I don't even trust this guy's smile. He's definitely cheating. Just about every talk at every conference, like this one, opens with speakers telling you who we are and why you should listen to us. I opened this workshop today by telling you we had so much to tell you and so little time to tell it to you, and I talked really fast, but that didn't stop me from spending 4 slides just talking about me instead. Because before I had any right to talk about the topic, I needed to argue because of who I am and what I've done. When it comes to this topic, I want you to trust me. I'm not even trying to get you all to change. I'm just trying to get you to not leave for the rest of the day. I want you ultimately to believe me because of this. But I think there are 2 important considerations to point out here. First, you can benefit from existing trust. So a lot of our projects at Mindblown Labs have worked with trusted financial institutions. For projects on lawns, we worked with landscape architects, trusted experts for that context. Victoria worked with a trusted organization in her community. Even if you don't have a working relationship with a trusted body, you can benefit from being aware of who they are and why they're trusted. So this summer at Cologne Game Lab, they ran a course based on this environmental game design playbook. Some of the students made a game about wind power and how great wind power is. And during an early critique, they got feedback that was basically, we don't believe wind power will work because what will happen when the wind stops blowing? We don't believe the message for your game. We don't trust your game. And the team of students did something really great, which is they found a real island that uses real wind power, excess wind power, to fill a reservoir with water. And when the wind stops blowing, the reservoir acts as a battery, and it switches to hydroelectric power. And it works, and it's been working. And they based the game on that real island. And it grounded in something that's already working. And then players looked at that and said, oh, I trust that. And the final point is, your players do trust you. You have a relationship with your players. If you work on existing games with existing player bases, your players do trust you or they wouldn't be your players. Players should not continue to play games they don't trust. You have an opportunity to further connect with the people you've already connected with. You have an opportunity to nudge and shift and expand your players' understanding of the world's problems and their ability to make a difference. You have this opportunity because they already trust you. And if you're looking to build new games, some of you in the room, new experiences, new organizations, that's powerful too. We need new experiences to help connect in new ways with the new populations. All of your existing game development skills can help you build these new trusted connections. We know which design practices are manipulative and which are in the player's best interest, so design accordingly. Treat your trust with care, treat it with respect, handle it responsibly, and as you bring large real-world problems to your players, be gentle with their feelings, be respectful of their goals, be supportive of their efforts as they learn to make a difference with you. These considerations are not the entirety of designing for transformational change, of course, but I do believe they offer a solid foundation because they highlight the crucial questions at hand. What are you trying to say? Who are you trying to say it to? And why should they trust you? If you can convincingly answer those questions and apply those answers through your design and development, then I do believe your games can and will be transformational forces for good. And that's all for me.